The Buchardt A10, these were loaned to me by the manufacturer. I wasn't paid to review these, and I'm sending them back once I'm done. Let's get the easy stuff out of the way first. Retail is about $4,150 US dollars or 3,800 euros as of today. These are power speakers which feature 150 watt plus 50 watt amplifier. So the 50 watt for the tweeter, 150 watt for the midwoofer. Speaking of the midwoofer, this is part of a two-way sealed enclosure design. The midwoofer features a 6.5-inch Purify extended stroke driver with ultra-low distortion. The tweeter in this speaker is a 19mm dome aluminum tweeter with an aluminum waveguide, and these are a new design tweeter. These speakers are basically multiple speakers in one box. Why do I say that? Because they have different what they call master tunings. What I'm showing here is a screenshot of Buchardt's website for their master tunings for this A10 model. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different tunings. But actually, each of these 9 tunings have a standard tune and then a more relaxed tune. So the standard would be in the blue, and then the relaxed would be in this red color. The difference between these two are basically bass compression and output limiting. So with the standard tune for each of the non-master tunes, the bass is limited. But with the more relaxed tune, you can basically just turn it up. But really, you can have 18 different tunes. And that's really neat about the speaker. So let's say you order the speaker and, my review seems glowing and you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to dig the speaker. So I'm going to order it. And you order it and you don't like the stock tune that it comes with. Well, now you've got 8 other tunes that you can try out, plus their alternative tune where it has less bass compression. So you can play around with, do I like the bass limiting or do I like more extended bass at the cost of potential distortion? Now, again, keep in mind that these use Purify drivers. So these Purify drivers are, if not the lowest, some of the lowest distortion drivers on the market today. I tried a few of these. The ones that I liked the most were actually the stock. And the stock flat tune with the lessened compression artifacts is the one that I would recommend on its own. As you can see, these are relatively small speakers, and you think, well, how can they go low? Are they actually full range, Erin? Well, yes, and you'll see in my data. But as I said, there is bass limiting and compression. So that would be the con. Another con about these is, and it's kind of weird to say it like this, but they are a constant directivity design, which means that the on-axis response and the off-axis response are basically the same, except the off-axis response is lowered in treble. And for those of you who don't know what I mean, let me show you. In black would be the speaker pointed directly at you, 0 degrees on axis. In red is an off-axis variant, 30 degrees off-axis. Now, if I said 10 degrees, the red would be pointed a little bit like this, or if I said 20, it would be a little bit in between. If I said 90 degrees, then it would be pointed off to the side somewhere. But that's the difference between on versus off-axis. When these speakers are pointed directly at you, the treble is lifted a little bit on axis, and because of the constant directivity, meaning that the sound that's spread out to the side of the speaker is so similar in profile to the on-axis sound, you're getting reflections that basically just reinforce the on-axis sound. Now, in speaker design, constant directivity can be a really good thing, but what I've learned is that a speaker that has flat on-axis response and constant directivity ultimately winds up sounding bright in the room, especially when it's pointed directly at you. So my recommendation for this speaker would be to point it away from you at 30 degrees, like you see in this photo set up in my living room. Let's talk about the pros now. So the pros, the extension into the low end is easily below 30 hertz in room. In my listening, I was about 10 feet away from the speakers. The speakers were about a foot or so off the back wall. And if you're curious what I mean by that, this is exactly what I mean. Here's a diagram. Great linearity on axis, fantastic directivity control, as I've already talked about, but those two together can kind of be a little bit tricky, okay? Remember that. And then the master tuning that I've already discussed as well. Those are all pros about this speaker. I've given you some recommendations as far as how to set the speakers up, but just to quickly recap, I would recommend trying the stock tune first, seeing what you think. If you find it's a little bit too bright, make sure you turn it off axis about 30 degrees. You also need to make sure that your ears are between the waveguide and that midwoofer. So the midway point height-wise of the speaker is the best place to sit. Otherwise, when you go about 15 degrees above or maybe 20 degrees below, somewhere in that ballpark, you'll start hearing a suck out in the upper mid-range as the midwoofer hands off to the tweeter. Now let's talk about the bass in a little bit more detail. In my listening room at about 10 feet away, what I found by using my SPL meter, A-weighted, was that around 75 decibels to 80 decibels, in that ballpark, I could audibly hear the shift from the low bass impact, I'm talking like 40, 30 hertz impact, to where there was less of it. So what's happening is, and this is the case with pretty much every DSP configured or powered configured speaker, especially smaller ones that use DSP to boost the low end, as you turn the volume up, that boost isn't boosting as much, or it could be cutting the bass. It does that to protect the drivers from overexcursion, overheating, frying the voice coil, things of that nature. And it just kind of makes sense from a warranty perspective. Now, if you're trying to jam out to these at high output levels, you're going to have to use that 60 hertz master tune. There's really no way around it, because at high levels, the bass is restricted to protect the speaker. In my case, I found that listening at around 65 decibels to 75 decibels was really the sweet spot. And again, that's at 10 feet away. If you're sitting closer, that's going to be a little bit louder just because you're closer to the speaker. If you're sitting further away, that's going to be a little bit lower in level because you're sitting further away from the speaker. As I got above 80 decibels at 10 feet away, I just noticed that the bass was tapering off more and more. And as I got to higher output levels, there was less and less bass. Now that impacts the dynamic range of the speaker. So let's say that you like to listen at low volume and you really hear that nice solid bass thump that these delivered. I mean, that at low volume, it's fantastic. They truly get down to probably mid 20 hertz in room, and you don't have to have a subwoofer. But as you start turning that volume up, maybe you just really want to jam out, that low bass just starts to go away. I discussed the fact of the combination of the constant directivity and the on-axis response being a little bit lifted. But because the speaker has constant directivity in the treble, you can do whatever the heck you want to do with the equalization. Now, in my case, I use this paired up with the WIM Ultra, and the WIM Ultra has an app that you can use with equalization. Getting back to the case where the speakers were pointed directly at me and sounded a little bit too bright, I could just go in and set a high shelf filter on these speakers via the app, drop that level down in the WIM, and then I would have a more neutral sound. Or let's say that you want a little bit more at 8K to 10K because you want a little bit more snap from a cymbal or something like that. You can go in and boost it. And the good thing is as you boost that, you're not altering the tonality in a detrimental way. A lot of speakers that don't have good directivity, meaning that the off-axis response doesn't align with the on-axis response in some regard, what happens is as you try to EQ the direct sound or the reflected sound, you're changing the other at the same time, but those sounds don't match. So what you're getting is a sound directly from the speaker and then a different sound from the reflection off the side walls or the floor or the ceiling. And as you change with EQ, you're still fighting those two because you can't change just the direct sound. You can't change just the reflected sound. When you equalize, you're changing the sound that comes out of that speaker, and that speaker doesn't know what's reflected or what's direct. So it's going to give you the same sound signature, but doing so in a way that may not please you. So you're thinking, hey, I need to get rid of the sibilance. I'm going to cut this particular area down. And then you do that and you find, well, that didn't quite work. That's because it has poor directivity control. Unlike this speaker where it has excellent directivity control. So in my case, I found that the sibilance was maybe a little bit too much sometimes. I just cut it down and I'd be all right. Now, I'm not saying that you cannot EQ a speaker at all to make it sound a certain way, but I'm just pointing out the difference between a speaker with good directivity control, good crossover alignment between the midwoofer and the tweeter. This speaker has that, and it makes it more valuable for you, the end user, if you want to EQ things to your own way, or alternatively, you use the different master tunings that Buchardt provides you. The sound of the speaker at low to mid volume in a small to medium sized room is fantastic. It gets down to, like I said, the mid 20s. The mid range sounds superb. The imaging is super tight and focused. One, because of the constant directivity and the on axis versus off axis reflections, but also because this is a DSP enabled speaker. So they have the ability to fine tune everything and get them to have a perfect matching pair if they wanted to. And since I know some of you wonder what I mean when I say small to medium sized room, typically what I use is the THX standard. Now, I'm not saying you have to agree with this method, but it's a baseline for me when I discuss these things. So small to me would be compact, medium would be select, and you can see the approximate volume of the room here. And roughly compact would be 10 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet, or the select, which would be the medium in my terms, would be 12 and a half by 12 and a half by 12 and a half feet. If you want to convert that over to metric, Google is your friend. Now that I've said all of that, let's walk through some of the data and I'll show you exactly why I say that this speaker has the characteristics that it does. And I'll give you some objective information on understanding the bass limiting and also the constant directivity versus the on-axis response and how the speaker can sound a bit bright in room without toe out or without equalization. And then you'll be better informed on how to use the speaker. First of all, let's talk about how the speaker was measured using my Klippel near-field scanner, which is a state-of-the-art robotic device that allows me to get anechoic data in a non-anechoic environment. It basically tells us this is what the speaker is doing before you even put it in a room. I can better predict how well you're going to like the speaker and give you suggestions on how best to use it with this information. First up is the on-axis and listening window linearity. And you can see why I said it has a slight rise in the treble. Up here, it's above this median line by about 1.5 decibels. So it's a little bit higher in the treble than it is in the lower to mid-range. The F3, which is the point where the frequency response has fallen off by 3 decibels, is at 30 hertz. And then the F10, the point where the frequency response has fallen off by 10 decibels, is at 21 hertz down here in the bottom. In other words, this speaker extends down to 30 hertz without a problem. And in room, you're going to get some extra boundary gain. So you're possibly going to get into the mid-20s out of this speaker. But again, keep in mind that it will be somewhat SPL limited. We'll talk more about that in a minute. CEA 2034 data set. This is pretty much flat right through here, which indicates constant directivity design. Now, this is with the warm tune, or the warm tune that has the default compression kind of relaxed a bit in the bass. Now, you're not really going to see the bass difference here. I would have to show you some other data, which I didn't just have time to do, honestly. We can see the warm tune is going to give you a bit of a scoop in the upper mid-range compared to the stock flat tune, where the flat tune has just a little bit of a bump right through there and it kind of flattens out in the higher frequency. The other thing to pay attention to is the early reflections, this dash line. Now, normally this dash line will match the estimated interim response. It gives you a good idea of the tonality. It's not perfect, but it's a quick way to look if you don't have the estimated interim response. So this blue line, this dash blue line, indicates that there is a suck out in this 2 to 3 kilohertz area, which is going to mean that you're going to have less attack, less dynamicism, and it's going to sound more warm. The lower mid-range is going to sound more full compared to that 1 to 3 kilohertz area. That's typical of a warm tune. All right, continuing on. Now I'm back to the stock tune. From now on, I'm not going to talk about anything but the stock tune. This is the estimated interim response at 0 degrees and then at 30 degrees off axis. And this is kind of a guide of how I heard the speaker. Now, I noted that with black on axis, the treble can sound a bit bright. And the reason I say that is because the treble sticks up above this blue line right through here. And that's exactly how I heard the speaker. When the speaker was pointed directly at me, it sounded a bit bright. When I turned it 30 degrees off axis, it came out to be something more like this red line, okay? The other thing is interim extension into the upper 20 hertz region. That's good. And thirdly, similar treble profile for the black and the red. So depending on how I turn the speaker, you're going to drop the treble a little bit, but the profile remains the same, which means that you're going to have a wider sweet spot for more listeners. It's going to have a very similar tonality depending on where you sit, whereas some speakers just don't perform well in this regard. If you have a friend sitting over to the side of you, he might hear something quite different from what you're hearing. You can see even with the stock tune, there is a slight dip in the estimated interim response. That's due to the vertical displacement between the tweeter and the midwoofer below it. It's not a huge deal, but it is worth noting that it may sound somewhat warm, but to me, it actually just came more off as sibilant or bright when pointed directly on axis due to this dip and because of the high frequency bump up. Let's talk about the contour of the horizontal plot. So if you were to take a bird's eye view and you were to take the frequency response and you were to smush this thing all into one rectangle, this is what you would have. 0 degrees right here, middle of the speaker, represents the sound that you're going to hear coming from the midpoint between the tweeter and the waveguide. And then as you go to the side of the speaker and around to the back, which is going to be 0 to 180 this way and 0 to 180 this way, this is how the high frequency is tapering off. And you can see that it's really not changing the profile a lot. There is a slight dip in the upper mid-range area to the tweeter, but otherwise, that's pretty much it. Now, this is why I consider this speaker close or pretty much a constant directivity design, because this red is pretty much flat through here. Now, when you combine that with a rising or a flat on-axis response, what you wind up with, and I've shown this many times, you can check many of my other coaxial type speaker designs or waveguide speaker design reviews. You'll see this is pretty much always true. You'll wind up with a bright sounding in-room response unless you take the speaker and you tow it out, or you take the high frequency and you kind of roll it off. Maybe use a high frequency shell filter or something like that and taper it manually via EQ. Vertical contour sweet spot for this speaker is about plus or minus 15 to 20 degrees above or below that midpoint between the tweeter and the midwoofer. 86 decibel harmonic distortion looks good. 96 decibel harmonic distortion also looks good. You don't hit my 3% threshold until around 60 hertz, 70 hertz or so. Multi-tone distortion shows us some issues at the highest output volume, which is in this green right here, which is 96 decibels at 1 meter. So if you're listening that high, the multi-tone distortion could be problematic. And that's also why I say this speaker is SPL limited, because at 96 decibels, which is my target, you've actually got about 2.5 decibels of compression. So realistically, your max volume on this speaker is around 94 decibels at 1 meter. Let's quickly go back to the multi-tone distortion full band, and we're going to compare this to what happens if you use a subwoofer at 80 hertz. This. Original subwoofer at 80 hertz. You can see that the difference is pretty significant. I mean, it's not like, oh my God, significant, but you lose maybe 5 to 10 decibels of multi-tone distortion when you use a high pass filter on the speaker, which basically just means that if you limit the excursion of that midwoofer, you're going to have lower mid-range distortion. Also, if I look back at the compression, which is showing 2.5 decibels of midwoofer compression and pretty much no tweeter compression, and then I high pass that, this is what I wind up with. So I go from about 2.5 decibels of compression to about 1 to 1.5 decibels of compression. So by limiting that midwoofer excursion, I am also limiting the compression. This is why I say that if you plan to listen to the speaker at high output volumes, your best bet is to use that 60 hertz master tuning, or if you're using a preamplifier like I was using the WIM in this guy, then you can limit the excursion via the pre. And that does it for this review. To wrap it up, this is basically what I have to say. If you're using the speaker in a small to medium sized room, which I've already defined previously, this speaker will get down to mid 20 hertz. You won't have to use a subwoofer. It sounds fantastic. It sounds much better when you tow it out, or if you use some equalization to drop the high shell filter down some. That's what I would recommend. You can put it close to a wall. You can bring it out from a wall. You can play around with the 18 in total different master tunings, from the 9 standard different master tunings, plus their variant for the relaxed compression for the bass area. All in all, I think this is a great speaker. At its retail price, it's definitely worth considering if you want something that doesn't take up a lot of space and you don't want to have to add multiple subwoofers to your room to get extension down into the low frequency area. But if you want to rock out and jam out on something, then you either need to use these as mains with a proper crossover, or you need to look at something larger. And I think that kind of goes without saying, but it's important to understand the design purpose of a speaker like this, because some people will look at this and say, oh, well, yeah, it gets down to 30 hertz in room or 20 hertz in room, but it won't do it at extreme high levels. Well, I think the obvious answer there is duh. And you got to be smart about what you're planning on buying. So hopefully the data that I provided here and the information that I provided here helps you make a better informed decision. If you want to help support this channel and what I'm doing here, you can do so one of a few different ways. You can join me at patreon.com/Erin's Audio Corner, where you can support me that way and get behind the scenes information and early access, things of that nature. Alternatively, if you're planning on buying anything from Amazon or Crutchfield or Best Buy or Target or Newegg today, tomorrow, next month, make sure you remember to come back to my page, go to my description, click the generic affiliate link that I use, and then type in whatever it is that you want to buy and buy it through that generic affiliate link. That way you're not paying anything out of pocket, but you are helping this channel by earning me a small commission at no additional cost to you. And I truly appreciate that, because ultimately that's how I keep the lights on. That's how I'm able to do extra fun things when I want to take a break from all of this. I appreciate you all watching. I will talk to you all later. Take care. Double deuces again. Peace.